Hello and welcome back to the NBAUSCAST. I'm your host, Kade. Got plenty to talk about today, obviously with Kyrie's disappearance from the Nets. Of course, the Harden trade, and also what I think the NBA should look at doing about the NBA at the moment with all the COVID issues that are going on. Teams are being ravaged right now, so plenty to talk about. So let's get straight into it. Number one, Kyrie's disappearance from the Nets. Um, Very interesting scenes. After missing his first game, after he beat the Jazz, pretty much the reports came out that he didn't want to play. I haven't seen any official reports that actually back that up, but it's been listed as personal reasons so far for every game he's missed. Those personal reasons seem to be partying with his family, being seen in Instagram stories and stuff with Drake. He's obviously got some very personal issues going on at the moment and needs to go out partying without a mask to do that. So, very, very interesting. I'm not sure what Kyrie's issue is, to be honest. Ever since he won that championship with LeBron back at the Cavs, it's just been a downhill slide from there. Forcing his way out of Cleveland because he wanted to be an alpha on a team, be the number one man. So he goes to Celtics, he's traded to Celtics to be correct, where the Celtics performed better when he was out injured and not even playing. A rookie in Jason Tatum and sophomore in Jaylen Brown end up being the best players on the team whilst Kyrie was there. And as controversial as that sounds, the stats back it up. They won more games without Kyrie playing, and just seemed to be a locker room disturbance. There's been no reports from any Celtics players saying that he was, but there's a reason he's not there anymore. So what happens? He goes to the Nets last year. Unfortunately, gets injured again, and then the Nets play better without him. Again, another team that starts performing better when he's not on the court, which is so hard and rare to see for a player that is so skillful, like one of the most skilled players I've ever witnessed. Arguably the best handles in the league. Definitely top three handles of all time. Can score under the basket, can hit the long range shot, can pull up from mid. He's just an excellent ball handler and a point guard. Like, he's an amazing player. And it's just weird to see the team seem to perform better when he's not on them. And then it leads up to this season. Kyrie's back. KD's back as well. Looking, they've got making the finals. Hopes and dreams to do that. Then Kyrie starts disappearing. KD is doing everything he can to hold the team up now, get them wins, playing unreal considering he's just come off an Achilles injury. He could potentially be the MVP if he keeps playing at this rate. It's going to be a bit harder now that they've got Harden, but we'll talk about that soon. But so far, just to let you know, Kyrie has been officially fined by the NBA $50,000 for breaching COVID-19 protocols for not wearing a mask, and obviously being caught doing that. He's had to forfeit salary coming up to missing their next game against the Magic. Will be his fifth straight missed game. Just to give you an idea, he earns just over $400,000 a game, so he has had to forfeit over $2 million in salary just for missing 5 games. It's just crazy to think that you'd be willing to throw away $2 million, be fined, be critiqued. Of course, if it is, apart from the partying, if it is personal reasons, obviously we hope nothing but the best for Kyrie and hope that whatever it is he's dealing with, he overcomes it. But from his track record and everything that he's done, it's hard to believe that it's just simple that he just doesn't feel like playing at the moment and prefers to be out partying and doing whatever the fuck he wants. So it's crazy to see that. And I sort of feel bad for KD too, because it was a package deal. Kyrie wasn't really that much wanted by the Nets. They wanted KD. Kyrie was the package deal that had to come with him. So I sort of feel bad for KD, the fact that he's left on his own at the moment, having to do it by himself until obviously Harden gets there. Now, what I think should happen is once he apparently today there was a report that he is, wants to come back and start playing again. Once he passes his, gets negative tests for COVID, he can return. Now, I think the Nets need to just set a tone with him. I'm not sure how it'll work, how he'll take it, if he'll go on another just missing spree, but I think they should play him off the bench for a few games just to set the precedent that you're not above the team and their needs. You can't just go and come back whenever you want and just expect to be the number one guy and run it yourself and just do whatever you want. I think they need to bench him, set the tone early. You can't do what you want and just expect it to get away with anything. So that's what I think they should do. I think the NBA should fine him more than $50,000. I think they should fine him another $50,000. At least make it a nice 100, and make the fine go to somewhere that's useful. Like donate to a charity or something, or turn his fine into arena workers and stuff that potentially aren't in jobs still because of the no crowds. But yeah, I think he should be fined again, brought off the bench for maybe 2 to 3 games, just to sort of give him that lesson and be like, you're not above the team. That's what I think should happen. I don't agree with Stephen A. that he should retire. He's never actually come out and said, I do not want to play basketball. His actions obviously aren't really helping that, but I don't believe he should retire because of this. Should the Nets trade Kyrie, though? That's one thing that I've been thinking about lately, is he just seems to be more trouble than what he's worth to the team. And obviously, I don't think, because of what he's done, his trade value, I don't think will be that high as what it could be if he was, a model NBA citizen. But after you've got Dinwiddie out for the season, you've just got rid of, players in the Harden trade. Why not trade Kyrie and try and get more pieces to put around KD and Harden, and give themselves a better chance and more depth going into a finals run? I rate Harden better than Kyrie. I think it'd be crazy if you didn't think he was a better player. KD's looking unreal. And I feel like Kyrie may just be a distraction to it. So my thoughts, bench him for a couple of games, bring him off the bench, and then maybe even see what suitors you can get and potentially trade him. So I'm interested to see what happens going forward with Kyrie and what his future at the Nets looks like. But hopefully we'll see more of that to come. I really hope he settles down and starts focusing on basketball again, because when he is on the court, he's special. Amazing scenes to watch. So fingers crossed he sorts himself out there. But moving on to the biggest news of the week, the Nets trade for James Harden. Now, when it didn't happen earlier in the season and they started playing again and the rumours died down a bit, I didn't think this trade would actually happen, but it's amazing to see that it has. Now, I'm going to be reading off my notes about what they've had to give to trade for Harden, because there's a lot to it. So there was a 4-team trade to pull this off. Sorry, just burped a little bit. The Nets, of course, received James Harden. The Pacers received Karis LeVert and a second-round pick. The Cleveland Cavaliers selected they received Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince. The Cavs now pretty much have a starting lineup of centers if they want. And the Rockets received Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodions Kurucs, 3 first-round picks from Brooklyn, 1 first-round pick via Milwaukee, and 4 first-round pick swaps from Brooklyn. That's a total of 8 picks over the next 5-6 years. That is a haul. Obviously, history shows the team that gets the best player normally always wins the trade. However, the Rockets seem to be either maybe building for the future, and I don't think they'll use all these picks to try and trade to build around John Wall, unfortunately. Because I love John Wall, so happy to see him back playing, and he's playing well too. So I'd love to see John Wall potentially traded as well to a contending team, and I'd definitely love to take him at my Miami Heat. I'll definitely have him, so hopefully that's something that happens. But the Rockets, I think, here have set themselves up really well for the future. If you have to get rid of James Harden, this is probably the best way to do it. You've got Victor Oladipo, who is an expiring contract, so if you do want to keep him long term, obviously you can re-sign him, or you can try and sign and trade him for more assets to build down the line. But with 8 first-round picks over the next 5-6 years, plenty of potential to build through the draft and make a solid team. And then obviously with the Cavs, they've got like 4 to 5 centers now, I believe. They've got Larry Nance, JaVale McGee, Drummond, Jarrett Allen, off the top of my mind. Taurean Prince, a good pickup. He's a really good defender, can hit shots when he needs to. So the Cavs, I think, they've got potential there. Jarrett Allen is a really good player. I think that he'll be a huge loss for the Nets, to be honest. And that's a really good pick for the future if you want to keep him for the future. Now, Pacers with Karis LeVert. Watch Karis LeVert average 28 a game this season. Not even kidding. If he doesn't average 28, it'll probably be 26, but his assists will be higher as well. I think he's an amazing player. I actually think he's a big loss for the Nets as well, even though they picked up James Harden. I think he'll blossom with the Spurs. He'll take over, be the number one guy there. Obviously, you've got Brogdon and Sabonis, but Sabonis obviously isn't the primary ball handler. So it'll be interesting to see how Karis goes on his new team with the Pacers. But my expectations going forward for the Nets, I think, is the same expectations as everyone. Finals or bust. And even a lot of people are saying win the championship or bust, not just make the finals. I believe, they should make the finals. I predicted pre-season that I think Milwaukee would finally take that next step and get through. Obviously pre-Harden trade, pre-seeing how Kevin Durant is playing. Now, I'm still going to keep that pick because I think that Giannis and the Bucks are being slept on at the moment. Giannis not even being in the top 5 of the MVP rankings yet, even though they're playing really well. And they're still, adjusting to new players and chemistry, obviously. So I still think they're the chance to come out of the East, but obviously it makes it a lot harder now with the Nets. My only issue going forward with the Nets, though, is their team before the trade. You obviously had Kyrie, LeVert coming off the bench, backing up. Dinwiddie's out for the season, injured. They've just got rid of Karis LeVert, their potential 6th man of the year, amazing player, as I mentioned. You've gotten rid of Jarrett Allen, your backup centre, who, in my opinion, probably could have been starting over DeAndre Jordan. I think he's an amazing young player. Obviously, they've got rid of Taurean Prince, another defender, like I mentioned, a great defender. They pretty much lost all their defense, bench scoring. Like, they still have, obviously, players to come off the bench. But, you got, Jeff Green and, Timothy Carrot, whatever his name is. But I think they don't have enough bench, potentially, to win the whole thing. Even if they get to the finals and they play the Lakers, I think it'll still be the Lakers. I think with AD and LeBron, and then the team they built around those two, they've got more depth and more squad strength to match up and beat the Nets. Obviously, having 3 superstars like Kyrie, Kade, and Harden in their prime. The other issue is what happens if Kyrie keeps going like he is at the moment and it comes to the playoffs and, he's nowhere to be found? It's just those two. They have no bench production. They're going to be horrible on defense. The only way I can see the Nets, winning is they're going to have to score a lot of points every game. Their defense isn't going to be amazing. Apart from KD and DeAndre Jordan, there's not that many great defenders left. Harden has improved on his defense, but not to the point where you can trust him just to lock someone up and, help the defense in general. He's great at getting steals, which is obviously a bonus to his defense, but there's an opportunity there for him to be abused on defense. Now, with that being said, obviously KD, it's only early and KD's coming off an Achilles injury. Kyrie seems to be injured almost every season for the last 3 years. And it's worrying to think that without any bench production, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but what if one of these three stars get injured and you don't have Dinwiddie still? You don't have LeVert to back up anymore. DeAndre Jordan goes down. Who's going to be your center? So I think it was a big gutting move for their bench to get Harden. Obviously, if you have the chance to do it, you want to try and do it. But that's why, leaning back to the first topic, that's why I think potentially you may see a Kyrie trade going forward, because they just don't have enough bench, in my opinion, to beat the Lakers this year, or potentially the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. So that's my thoughts on the expectations of the Nets going forward this season. Now, to finish our episode today, just going to quickly speak about the COVID-19 issues going on with the NBA. A lot of players are falling victim to COVID-19 and are missing, weeks at a time. And it's really hurting, obviously, the game. You're not getting the quality that you want. Teams that, could be in a better position aren't really winning games because they don't have enough players. Like, you look at Miami, for instance, they lost their last 2 games to the Sixers. One of them was in an overtime loss by 3 points. Miami was missing 8 players for both games. 8. Bam Adebayo, Butler, Dragic, like all these players, like Myers Leonard, a lot of our starters, best players and bench gone. And, with a full lineup, I think Miami can beat almost everyone at least 1 out of 2 games. So I think, they could have got one of those 2 games against the Sixers if they had their lineup. The Sixers still had Tobias Harris, Embiid, Simmons, Danny Green, Milton. Like, they still had a great squad. If we lost by 3 in overtime, add 1 player back in, like maybe Butler or Bam or both, we probably win that game, in my opinion. So I think teams are being hurt by this. So one thing, extended roster spots the NBA needs to bring in immediately. A lot of teams, are limited to players, to the players that they can bring on. A lot of games are being postponed because teams just don't have enough players to play the games. The other thing is they need to somehow reform what they did with the playoffs and have a bubble again. Now, it's worked for the playoffs, as you know. There was no positive cases. They finished the playoffs, crowned a champion. And a lot of players, like, I know there was a quote by George Hill saying that, if I want to hang out with people after the game, I'm going to do that. If I want to visit my family, I'm going to do that. That's not my fault if I want to do that and I get COVID. It's not a very good look. You're a paid professional. I think a lot of these athletes forget that they're employees of the NBA. They are paid a salary. It's their job. They're not entitled to miss work just because they want to go out partying and stuff. And do their own thing and risk others in their profession. Karl Anthony Towns has tested positive today, unfortunately, and he lost his mother earlier this season. Could you imagine if we find out he got that from a player that was just recklessly out doing what he wanted, going partying without a mask. It's probably bloody Kyrie, like with his bloody issues, going out partying with no mask. And these players aren't thinking about the issues that could this cause. What if the season gets too ravaged by COVID and then they have to end up stopping the season again? What if it's too early in the season, players don't want to do a bubble again for an extended period of games that's longer than a playoff series, and the owners decide, well, we can reopen the CBA in that point. And from what I've heard and reports I've seen, if that happens, the NBA wants to bring in a hard salary cap like the NFL, meaning a lot of players won't be able to get those supermax contracts to take them over the salary cap to keep them, because it'll be a hard cap which you cannot go over. So I think they need to, one, heavier fines and punishments for players that are breaking COVID protocols. Two, lift the roster spots to allow more players per team in case of COVID protocol, players missing games. And three, try and implement a bubble again as best as they can for this. Now, I know this was a bit longer of an episode than normal, but thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, share it. Really appreciate everyone that tunes in and watches. You can follow my Twitter at NBAUSK, NBAUSK. And thanks very much, and I'll see you on the next episode of the NBA Auscast.